So good day, folks. This is Mario Duaro here. I'm going to be talking about companion planting. What's companion planting? Basically, it's an ecosystem approach to organizing your garden. Grow more plants in a smaller space. So let's see how this works. Take a look at how nature works. Out in the woodlands and stuff, if you look in our background here, we have forests. You don't see any plants growing in straight lines, and you never see one type of plant growing in the wild. It's always a variety, a diversity of different organisms growing together in teamwork. One helps the other. We imagine that there's a lot of competition going on, that plants compete against one another, but when you take a look very closely at the biology of what's actually going on, oftentimes you have plants and animals who cooperate with one another in order to share resources. So the way this works, for instance, right over here, set up a series of posts where we're going to be doing some, I'll turn the camera a little bit. So we have a series of posts over here. So we're going to do a combination of peas, carrots, and lettuce. So before we plant, it's best to have, if we're going to be have a structure, a trellis, it's best to put your trellis in the ground first before you plant your seeds, so you don't disturb the seeds that are trying to grow. And that way, you're not digging around and moving around and messing things up. So we stick the posts in first. We'll run some strings probably in the next few days. It's going to take a couple of weeks before the peas are ready to start climbing the trellis. So why peas, carrots, and lettuce? You see, peas are one of the very important types of plants. They're called legumes. That's a family of plants that include beans, they include clover, hairy vetch, one of the weeds that grows in our garden sometimes. Well, hairy vetch, it has a symbiotic relationship. That's a reciprocal relationship with another organism. So there's a bacteria that lives on the surface of these plants, of legume plants' roots, that are able to absorb nitrogen from the air, convert it into a soluble form that the plant can use. 70% of our atmosphere is nitrogen, but the plants can't use it. These bacteria can make use of that, and they share it with the plant in exchange for sugar. So that's an example of teamwork in nature. We can make use of that in our garden in order to enhance the productivity of our plants. So peas, beans, and other legume plants like that actually create their own fertilizer. And if you plant other plants in the proximity among their roots, they'll fertilize those as well. So if we can take a look at an example of the three sisters used by the First Nations of North America, they would plant corn and squash together. Basically, they'd make a clump of 7 or 8 ears of corn in a little mound and plant some squash around it. Once the corn grows about knee high, they would plant scarlet runner beans or other climbing beans, different varieties, so that the beans will climb the vertical structure of the corn stalks, will tie them together, protect them against wind so they don't flop over. So the corn provides a vertical structure for the beans to climb. The beans provide nitrogen, fertilizer, for the squash and the corn to grow, because those are very, very greedy plants that demand high nitrogen. And all three growing together provides a complete vegetarian diet, including your starches, your carbohydrates, and your proteins, right? So these are very efficient systems. And you'll see that oftentimes the plants that you put together on the plate grow well together as well in the garden. So, what goes better than peas and carrots, right?
Yeah.
Right? So in the garden as well, peas and carrots grow very well together. So that would be an example of companion plants, plants that are good companions, good partners, one with the other. So these nitrogen producing plants, they help plants produce leaves. So if you plant vegetables that are leafy, like lettuce, cabbage, spinach, all chard, kale, all of these green leafy vegetables grow very well with beans or peas. So it's a combination that we can grow them together and save space by planting them in close proximity together. Instead of having just a single row of one vegetable in a large walkway, you have multiple rows grouped together without a walkway in between. So that gives you more vegetables for the same square footage of your garden space. And that's just more production out of the same space. You can double, triple, quadruple, depending on how many plants you put in your garden space. You can really increase the output of your garden doing this way. Particularly when you're looking at vegetables that produce their own fertilizer, that's less fertilizer you need to buy for your garden. So that lowers your costs, increases your output and productivity with less effort, right? So what we did here, so this direction over here is south, so sort of south-ish, we'll say. The row is sort of goes east-west, so this southern side here will have a lot of light and shade on the north side. So we'll put our lettuce on the northern side of the row. It'll have shade. It'll be protected from sunlight and heat that tends to make lettuce and other things like spinach. It makes them bolt earlier as soon as there's too much heat. So by providing some shade to the lettuce, so we'll have a longer harvest season. And let's not forget that we can have 2 harvests per year on lettuce and spinach. We could plant it in the spring, it goes until midsummer, then it starts to bolt. If we plant them again in a shady spot in midsummer, then we'll have a fall harvest as well. So here we'll be able to have our early season lettuce coming out of this, and then midsummer they'll be pretty much done. We can take them out and we can plant another batch of lettuce in the same spot, because the peas are still going to produce more fertilizer for that lettuce, and lettuce are not a very heavy feeder. So we're going to end up with a large production in a small space and with much less effort. Now, companion planting is not just peas, beans, and that kind of stuff. There is all kinds of things and strategies to help reduce pests, eliminate the tendency of pests to attack our crops. For instance, we can use onion to hide the smell of particularly vulnerable vegetables. For instance, cabbage moths are a bane for cabbages, right? You get these little white moths, they come out and they'll flutter, they're pretty little moths and stuff, but they lay these darn little caterpillars on your cabbages. They do a lot of damage. But the way insects find your crops is through their sense of smell. So if we plant smelly vegetables around them, it helps to hide and camouflage your vegetable so that the pests have a harder time to find it. But onions and peas, onions and beans don't go well together. So we don't want to mix those up. So our onions and our cabbages can go in one end of the garden, and then our peas and carrots and lettuce can go at this end over here. Keep them a little separated, and we should be good. So what I like to do at home for my cabbages, I like to grow a cabbage in the middle row, and then a row of garlic on one side and a row of onions on the other side. With those 2 rows, on either side of the cabbage, the insect, the cabbage moth, has to find it in between that onion. And to the cabbage moth, that cabbage smells like onion. It doesn't smell right. So it'll probably go find the cabbage on your neighbor's garden who doesn't have onions growing next to them and might leave yours alone. It's not foolproof, but it helps. It helps you it reduces the incidence of and severity of pest damage. So a lot of these companion groupings, we can find a lot of them online. The important part is to remember that how to arrange it. Online, they'll tell you things like, this and that goes well together, but how you arrange them in your garden so that it works. So that's what we're doing here. We're showing that lettuce prefers shade. So we'll grow it vertically on east-west, providing shade on the northern side so that we have room for our lettuce. On the southern side, where there's going to be sun most of the day, we'll have our carrots growing, and they'll grow for a long season. They'll be ready to harvest in October, possibly November. And they'll have their own fertilizer. We won't need to fertilize this lot of this spot of garden here, because the peas will provide a lot of that nitrogen fertilizer. We're going to go into some lettuce. So like I mentioned before, I planted peas in the middle between the posts. On the south side, I planted carrots sprinkled around like pepper so that they're not in a straight line, because if they're in a straight line, they'll grow too close together and you'll have to thin them out. By sprinkling it like that, or like pepper, they're more spaced out over a larger area, and they'll cover an area, roughly 6-8 inches wide, and then all of their leaf matter is going to create shade, and they're going to cover the ground at the foot of the peas. So there's no more, once the carrots come in, no more weeds are going to be able to grow there. There's not going to be enough light to allow weeds to grow. They'll shade the ground for the peas, so the peas won't be as stressed in the heat. And on the north side, we're going to put our lettuce so that the lettuce is in the shade and doesn't suffer from the heat so much, and it won't tend to bolt so early. Now, one of the tricks with lettuce is that they need sunlight in order to germinate. So if we bury them too deep, they won't germinate, they'll just rot. So I'm just going to come in with the rake and give a light dusting, just a very light dusting of soil on top, just to hold them in place, and we're done. So that is 3 crops growing in the space of 1 walkway. So that's an efficient use of space. When designing companion planting organizations, you have to think about what kind of plant, how does the plant behave. A carrot, for instance, grows one long root, a straight little root straight down, while the peas have fine little roots close to the surface. So because they're not occupying the same space in the soil, they're not competing with one another. And you want your carrots to be growing in amongst the roots of the peas so that they can take advantage of the nitrogen fixing nodules in the root zone of the peas. If they're too far apart, they won't be able to take advantage of that. So we're not, companion planting is not like one row of peas on one side and then a row, you know, a walkway and then a row of carrots after. They're not actually interacting with one another. They're just in proximity. For companion planting, they need to be close enough so that they can shake hands, so that they can have a relationship with one another. That's how nature works, right? And the lettuce also has very fine roots close to the surface, very similar to the peas, so they'll also intermingle with it, and the nitrogen fixing properties of the peas are going to enhance the leaf growth in the lettuce and provide shade. So the physical vertical trellis provides shade, and that can be a benefit to a plant that's not very heat tolerant, right? So we're looking at how plants grow, how they behave in the garden, and we can figure out which plants will be able to play well together. You know, resiliency comes from working together, right? So happy gardening and have a great summer, folks. Thanks for watching. I swallowed a bug. I might keep that for the blooper roll, I guess. All right, so welcome to New Brunswick. We got black flies around.